So our first property is valued around $340,000. And then our second property was a small family home, which is valued around $590,000 right now. And then our current property is like around $780,000.
I love talking about increasing your net worth. This is our barometer for wealth building success. Today, we're going to speak with an investor who has grown her net worth to over $900,000 by age 28. Andrea Wallace is our guest today. Andrea lives with her husband, Tyler, and her 2 boys in Arizona. And when she's not building her family's wealth, she loves board game nights with friends, escape rooms, and staring blankly at her Netflix account. Welcome to the show, Andrea.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here and being transparent and helping other families win like you have. So looking back, let's talk about this. What was your motivation for building the wealth that you have so far?
Yeah. So, I've always just really liked money. I wasn't quite a normal child in the sense that I used to do things like I would hide my money around my house or around my room. And so I would get like $10 and I'd just tuck it somewhere like in a book or a little cubby. And so when I was ready to move to my sister's room when she went off to college, I actually went through my room and found like $200 and mostly ones just kind of like scattered throughout my room.
Love that.
And so, I just, I really liked money. And so I guess my answer to that question would just be that I don't know that I really needed motivation. It was always just kind of like a fun thing for me. And I think a lot of that had to do with like my dad used to always kind of approach money as not like, can we do this? But more so, how can we do this?
So Andrea, when did it go from hiding money in the books to actually putting it somewhere else that helped you to build wealth?
Yeah. So I then, shortly after that started, my parents opened a bank account for me. And by the time I had graduated from high school, I had amassed a small sum, quite large for a teenager, but I had like $10,000. And so as a junior in college, I actually decided that it might be a good idea to buy a house at age 19 with zero income as a full-time student and instead rent out 2 rooms to cover the mortgage. So my parents, I was fortunate enough to have parents who helped me through college, and they kind of agreed, and they ended up having to co-sign for me because, like I said, I had no income, so no bank would lend me money. Then, I stopped hiding money in my cubbies, but then it grew into real estate and went from there.
I love that. So you at age 19, you buy a house and you house hack it essentially with some friends. They pay the mortgage. And then, and I love your story about hiding the money in the book. I think that's pretty much how people become wealthy, is just hiding the money somewhere in some sort of savings account, asset, or investment account. And that's really how this all works, everybody. But you started hiding it in assets. So after that first house, what else did you do to build your wealth?
Yeah, then we knew it was like a great rental property. We kind of bought it with that intent. And so since we didn't have a mortgage, it was really easy for us to build up a new down payment. And so we built up a new down payment by the time we were, starting to looking at start a family, which was like 4 years after we bought our first property. We saved up a down payment for a new property and then kept our other one as a rental. And so that's how we kind of got into the rental game too. And then we did the same thing recently.
So you now have 3 houses, is that right? So you have the one that you bought when you were 19, and then you bought another one, I'm assuming with your then husband, and now you are buying one, or you currently have a third, is that right?
We just bought one almost exactly a year ago and doing the same approach. And this time we actually weren't we weren't even like considering buying, because I was just convinced that the best strategy was to stay in our house for as long as we could and not like upgrade our lifestyle at all. And so that was the path I was trying to go. But then, with the housing market where it was and interest rates so low, I was just kind of looking, and then realized that the rent we could get on our second property would cover, basically what I wanted for my next home for the mortgage. And so ended up just kind of out of nowhere being like, okay, this makes sense. So now how can we do it? You know, it was again, it wasn't the can we do it? It was how can we make it work and do it? And so we ended up refinancing our first property to get most of the down payment. We sold our second car because my husband was working from home. We only needed one car. And then we also pulled a little bit from our HSA account, and then we're able to buy our next property.
Oh man, I love it. So can you break down your net worth for us today? I told at the top of the show you guys are over $1 million now in your late 20s. What does that consist of? Is it a lot of it that's real estate?
Yeah, so we did actually have our first experience with market volatility. We are currently at 900,000 now, and that is due to the market in Phoenix has taken a pretty big hit. A lot of our net worth was in our real estate. I think at the time we had like 900,000 in equity, and now we're down to like 750,000 in equity. And then our stocks were, somewhere around 200,000 or something like that, and they're now like 160. So we're closer to 900,000 right now, but I think at the peak we were like 1.1 million.
Got it. Yeah, no, I think I've definitely felt that same hit on my stock portfolio too. I think I'm down about $100,000, 80 to $100,000 from the peak last year. So we're all feeling that. So, but I'm sure based on the way markets have gone in the past, we'll be back up into positive territory in the near future. So outside of the mortgages, the $1 million in mortgages, how much do you have other debt outside of that?
So we do actually have a small car loan still, and that's solely due to the fact that, again, it's like a 3% interest rate. And so I've just been putting off, I just feel like logically I understand that the money will probably do better in the stock market. So I've just been making the minimum payments on that car loan and just letting that sit.
That sounds.
But that's like fire 101 is no consumer debt. So I battle myself with it all the time.
Yeah, that makes sense. So let's recap then. So people understand your assets are the homes and your and your investments then. So I guess what is the value of the homes then, I guess, overall?
Yeah, I mean, so Phoenix is a pretty decent market. And so our first property is somewhere around 340 is probably I usually use the Zillow estimates, which isn't super accurate, but it's super easy. So Zillow estimates that our condo, so our first property, is valued around 340. And then our second property was a small family home, which is valued around, it's like 590,000 right now. And then our current property is like around 780,000.
780. Okay. Well, yeah. So you've got a lot of high equity in a lot of these properties, and then that's where the larger mortgage balance comes in, and then we get to 900. Okay, I just want to help everybody out with the math problem of net worth, right? You got your assets minus your liabilities gets your net worth, so that's where you guys are today, which is incredible in your late 20s to be close to $1 million or darn near almost there. So talk to me about your financial dreams going forward. You guys have this great portfolio. You and your husband are there with your kids. What are your dreams and goals for the future now? You guys have so many years ahead of you.
Yeah. So I think, we recently kind of hit a point where it's a lot about family right now. And so we've kind of, I've always been very money minded. And so I've kind of had to shift that mindset of okay, it's okay if we eat out, 4 times a week, because it's easier, it reduces stress, we can spend more time with kids. I think before our max was once a week. And so just switching our mindset to more of I don't know if I think you've heard of it, but maybe your audience might not know the term SLO-FI, which is kind of just the concept that you make lifestyle shifts to make your life where you want it to be before you actually reach retirement. And so that's kind of my mindset right now is, we've already reached our coast-fi number. And so anything that we save now is just getting us to an earlier retirement. So just switching that mindset to now is just all about spending time with family. And, we're still planning on retiring before 40, but our original goal was to retire by 35. And I think I'm kind of letting myself push it back a little bit to kind of make sure the time that we have with our kids while they're young is quality time.
So I think a lot of it, when we talk about FIRE and early retirement, has a lot to do with enjoying the work that you do. So does your husband enjoy what he does? Do you enjoy what you do?
Yeah. So my husband is a software developer, and he, during COVID had a switch to working full time remote, and then switched positions recently to another full time remote position. So he's full time remote, which he loves, and is really good for our family because he's around a lot more, and so our boys get to see him every day, throughout the day. He's excited to get to fire because he wants the option to not work, but he does enjoy what he's doing right now. And then I've been mostly a stay-at-home mom for the past 4 years, but I recently have been getting a little bit more time with the kids getting a little older, and I picked up a side gig doing a little teaching. I'm teaching graphic design at Arizona State University, so the university here in Arizona, one of them. And that's been really good for me because that gives me a little bit extra, a little bit extra sense of accomplishment than, okay, the kids are fed today.
Yeah. I think that's great. For somebody that's listening right now and they have sort of that saver's mindset, I call it, that you grew up with, you're like, hey, I like money. I like having it. I like keeping it. Talk to that person about, if you get to this point where you've hit Coast Fire, you've got this near $1 million status in your 20s or your 30s or your 40s, give them some advice about, stepping off the gas a little bit. What's the first step you're going to take to kind of allow yourself to enjoy more of that money that you feel comfortable putting inside the book, but you want to enjoy it? What's the first step you're going to take? Maybe you could help your people who are in a similar position.
Yeah. So, for us, it's been a lot of just allowing ourselves, I've always been really against like subscription based things. And so like the idea of a gym membership was really hard for me. I'm like, okay, we could buy some dumbbells, we could go on runs, we can do this for free ourselves. So the idea of a gym membership was always really hard for me, but we found a gym that has childcare, and I was like, okay, well, that's like a good investment, so just allowing myself to buy into some of those things that just make life a little easier. That would be the advice I would give to people, is just to figure out what makes your life easier and more enjoyable. If you're just like think about what you're feeling like your life is lacking. So are you lacking time? Are you, feeling deprivation because you've been saving so much and maybe you need to enjoy things a little bit more? Are you feeling reclusive and you need to, go travel and visit some family? And just figuring out those areas that you really think that you could benefit from, and just allowing yourself to spend a little bit more. And I think you'll be pretty surprised at how little those kind of things can really make an impact on your overlying numbers.
I think that's great, Andrea. I think, looking into what those fears are, looking into what those things that are impacting you the most, and then, slowly feeding those and feeling, wow, okay, that made a big difference, even though it might be a small amount of money. I think this is great advice. Andrea, I understand you have some resources and you're willing to help people on their journey too. So where can people connect with you and learn more from you?
Yeah, I have a blog that you can feel free to reach out to me at. It's makingmoneynerds.com. So you can go ahead and contact me through that.
I love it. Makingmoneynerds.com. That's a website I need to go to because I definitely fall into that category as well. Andrea, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Of course, no problem. Thank you for having me.